Hello, everyone. My name is Dane Abinalha, and today I will be talking about the real epidemic going on, the spread of misinformation online. Today I will be bringing this up because I did a speech earlier on this at the earlier presentation, and today I will be doing a whole slideshow on this topic. First, we will begin with the uprising of social media. Today we've seen so many more apps and so many new platforms coming out. Big ones, headliners such as Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Reddit are one of the biggest social media platforms today. And we're going to see more and more users turning into it. As the world's turning into a more of a digital platform and we're replacing, the face-to-face, conversations with, remote work, online work, a whole new social media sphere is being brought up in the world. And it's going to be changing how we receive news, how we receive, messages, how we relay messages, and how we share news all together. So, over the years, we have seen an increase of social media usage. From this research from Pew Research Center, I would like it's to say that it's been increasing ever since 2006. We're reaching almost 80% of US adults saying they use at least one social media site. That's insane for how many users or people there are in the United States. And it seems like having a social media is sort of the new norm today. Um, when you ask people, how to get connected with others, they kind of give you their at name, or even their account information, and it's to say that social media really is impacted everyone here in the United States. Everyone really has one social media account or another. And when it comes to news, there are many ways news breaks on social media. You could sign up for alerts or notifications, which in turn give you instant gratification. It's very accessible and virtually everywhere. When I say accessible, I would like to say that, social media breaks on one site, and all you have to do is just, open the app. And by the way your feed is set up, you can get it right away within minutes of it happening. And it is a little bit more accessible than the old kind of mediums of, television, newspapers, radio, where, there might be a slight delay in how it is relayed or how it is conveyed to the world. And it being virtually everywhere, every social media site has, sources that give out news, and all you have to do is just follow them with one simple, easy click of a button, and you could, get your news right away, and giving you that instant gratification of not having to search for it, not having to do a deep dive, not having to, ask around with everyone, and it's just really just right there in front of you, just because of how you want it, how you want your feed to be, you know, displayed. Now, in terms of the age of social media users, it seems that the newer generations are going to be on the forefront of how social media is being used and who is using it the most. From these studies of the Pew Research Center, it seems that ages 18 to 29 and even from 30 to 49 are the ones who are using the smartphone, computer, tablets more often than the other mediums. And the older age demographics are using the older mediums because that's what they grew up on, whether it be television and radio and print, with television being one of the top ones because that's what they grew up on, watching the news, waiting for breaking news to hit, the television, waiting for the hourly shows of the news. Whereas the younger generations now have smartphones and computer and tablets, and back to what I was saying of instant gratification and being accessible, they don't have to wait for anything anymore. They could find news on their own time, and social media is kind of what they were growing up on because now, smartphones were being developed during, their growing up and always being around them. And this other chart I have here is online. Most turns to news websites, except for the youngest, who are most likely to use social media. So again, the younger generations are likely to use social media for news purposes rather than the actual news websites or apps. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook are the top ones for the demographics from 18 to 29, and that's sort of the age that smartphones really hit When the iPhone came out about what 10 years ago, the 29 year olds were probably 18, 19, 20, and it's just been getting advanced ever since. And you're no longer having to go through other types of mediums like podcasts or other apps to go through it. It's just easy on social media, and they don't have to search for it as hard as other ones. And here we are seeing that digital platform is the new norm. From these other researchers from Pew Research Center, roughly half Americans prefer to get news on digital platforms. About a third prefer television. As you see, more than 50% uh, um, prefer the digital platforms more than anything else. And that's just saying that how much it is getting easier to receive news, and how much it is just being able to get it right in front of you. And another one is the large majority of Americans get news on digital devices. See that there is a range from being often to sometimes, but that's still 86% of the study being mostly on a smartphone, computer, or tablet. So you're seeing that more preferred digital platforms for their news, and they often get it there more than more other different mediums. Now, talking about misinformation and disinformation, I would like to bring up there are two separate types of type of things being spread online. We have misinformation, which is it's about um, it's the false or misleading headlines that or the content that includes hoaxes, conspiracy theories, fabricated reports, click on bait headlines, and even satire. They're meant to mislead. They're meant to be fake, and it's just meant to just be put out in the world and see who is going to fall for the news. And then there's disinformation, which is created to deceive others. When you think about disinformation, it's really dangerous because the sheer amounts of information there is, and the length of the reader's attention spans go aloud can be unchecked. So it could just keep getting spread on, and that's where information overload comes in, when it's just too much all at once, and you have to take in what only you could take in, and you might be receiving the wrong information at the time. And why it's important that that we notice that there is misinformation, disinformation being spread online is that news and other types of content can be spread to spread hatred around the world. It could be meant to slander someone's name or reputation. It's divisive and exploitative. People can lose credibility. You could so quote unquote cancel somebody just because of news being spread. It could divert public conversation. We're having something's being brought up, and this type of news is being broken to take away what's really important on the world, and meant to just work on people's emotions. We've seen hijacking of democratic potentials through elections, but I'll go over that later. And it does undermine our ability to agree with the truth. Just seeing misinformation, meaning false news all the time, it's just not good for you, and it's just gonna just not make things clear anymore. Problem with fake news, it spreads faster and wider than most things. When you see one of the biggest names in politics, and you see a headline that's just crazy, too crazy to be real, it does spread fast. It does spread wide across different platforms, across different mediums, and the shares are due to laziness or distractions. People aren't willing to read the article, see who the author is, if they're credible or not, and all it is just a simple retweet button, and that can reach thousands of other people, and those thousands could turn to millions, and so on and so forth. And problems with fake news also could be stemming from politicians. This could be part of their agenda to take over social media, to get votes off of this, and it can skew opinions. It could change how we see things, how we agree with others, how we view the truth, and how we see our side of the story. And this comes from the first instance of the 2016 U.S. presidential elections. There was a lot of misinformation being spread about Clinton. There was a lot of misinformation being spread about Trump. But there was a lot of things going on one side that it really skewed a lot of the voters. There was a lot of examples of it being, Clinton being very, poor in health. And, these people 12% of users, were believing it, or 12% of users were sharing this type of news, whether or not believing or not, but sharing it. And this is from Twitter. And, having Clinton in this whole narrative here makes him seem like she's not going to be a good leader. Pope Francis endorsing Trump, this many people shared it, and you know, whether or not it gave the religious, kind of religious type of voters someone to root for, and Clinton approving weapon sales to Islamic jihadists, including ISIS. Whether that was true or not, a lot of people shared this one because at the time ISIS was a main threat to the United States, and anyone's name tagged with that organization was just was not receiving was not seen in a good view. There are types of news, fake news we see today. Whether it be in the news about Ukraine and stuff like that. We see old videos being brought up with new headlines that are totally false, or even false news of some extreme headline of Steven Seagal, being in the war, spotted in outskirts of Russia and Kiev, and yeah. And then across different platforms, we see, an old YouTube video being brought up in Twitter, and that's not real. And then we see Facebook posts of false information, with 4.2 thousand shares off not a verified account. And then there are times of Instagram where there's just out of context. It was just wrong information, wrong scene, and it's not right. And the stats of seeing and sharing is that, about a third say they often see made up political news, and, nearly half say they see inaccurate news. That's a lot of users online to really back it up. And about 1 in 4 report sharing fabricated news. So 25% of online users are sharing fake news, false news, and whether they agree or not, and then they finding out later is really just the problem here. And then fake news also showing confusion. You could leave users confused on what the truth is. It makes things complicated for wanting to get the truth. It causes distrust with political leaders, with credible sources, with many other people, and it causes a moral panic. People having to choose the right thing because of how a headline goes. And I see the other side of the argument of it being, news is very important, and social media is becoming an uprising, that we have to combine these two. And I agree. It's just doing your research and sharing the right information is important. We have to do our job, and we have to have solutions to these things, and being skeptical, asking why or who when we read news sources. We have to be careful being too emotional when reading news sources. Educate yourself with the right type of information, what's going on. Verify these accounts, make sure they're credible, make sure they're actual people, not just robots or even, malicious content. Check your own biases. There is always other sides of the story, and just because there's another side doesn't mean it's wrong. Look where you get your news. Make sure, you split up the different mediums. Social media is great, but you can get other news from other sources, and creating a better timeline is something you could always do. Follow credible accounts, filter out the fake news with that. Follow who you want, but make sure if you're going to get news, make sure it's from a credible source. Create meaningful discussions with others. Get in a conversation with others. It's okay to be, having one-on-one. It's okay to have disputes online. Just make sure it's educational. Make sure it's meaningful. Block unwanted news. Make sure you report it or even spam it. Nowadays, it's easy to just spam it and red flag it and make the timeline yours. Follow who you want to. Make sure it's correct news. Make sure it's right news, and make sure you get what you want from out of it. And these are my sources. Thank you so much.